Hi all, it's Charlotte Appleton with Zazari Project. I've done a lot of thinking about why medicine fails to reverse or cure chronic disease, with the downstream effect of healthcare not being able to do it either. When we think about chronic diseases, whatever it may be, we automatically assume there's a cause and effect relationship to something, that something triggered a system to behave in an abnormal or diseased way. This sets up a basic premise that there are sparks and conditions when it comes to understanding diseases in general. Germ theory of disease, which came around in 1860, proposed by Louis Pasteur, really set the precedence for what I call a sparks-based approach to disease. That is this obsession with looking for the trigger, the cause, the event that leads to a cascade of events that lead to disease and the complications it creates. In this case, certain infectious pathogens found in the environment were connected to patterns of disease. There are a lot of examples of this. If a mosquito carrying the Plasmodium parasite bites a human and transmits that parasite, that person can go on to develop malaria. There's no other way to get malaria. In that case, the parasite is the spark. The same can be said of syphilis and typhoid and other historically common infectious pathogens. One thing germ theory is not good at is dealing with the conditions of disease. The presence of a spark or an infectious agent doesn't always cause disease. For example, if you strike a match and throw it on the pavement, it's not going to start a fire because the conditions are not conducive. If you throw the same match in a bucket of gasoline, there will be an impressive response. In that case, the conditions really determine the fate of the spark. In the early germ theory days, there was another competing theory called terrain theory set forth by Antoine Béchamp, who proposed that disease is caused by the body's composition. In that way, abnormalities of the internal environment created the sparks. This is a fundamentally different approach than the idea that sparks are externally derived, seen in germ theory. Although this theory recognized a role for conditions in disease, it conflicted with the sparks-based theory and ended up disappearing into the heap of debunked theories in the wake of germ theory's success. A third theory at the time was miasma, which was a much older belief that preceded germ theory of disease and terrain theory. This idea had been around for millennia and was based on this concept of bad air. This bad air was some type of noxious presence that arose from rotting organic material and was associated with foul odor. Anyone who came into contact with bad air, wherever it may be, was at risk of developing disease, or one of many diseases. Before the disease happened, bad air was a condition of disease, and after the disease happened, it was identified as the spark or cause of that disease. Unfortunately, it was pretty confusing because it effectively caused all diseases. So it was a game of Russian roulette that if someone was exposed to bad air, what disease might pop out of that situation. Together, these three theories cover the three possible relationships between sparks and conditions. Germ theory says sparks is everything, conditions don't really matter, or that the only condition that does matter is where the spark is. Terrain theory said conditions are everything and sparks arise from that. And miasma said, well, it's a little bit of both depending on how you look at it. So are any of them really wrong? Are any of them really right? To get away from the right and wrong concept, let's consider that they're all very incomplete. They each seem to have a place in today's thinking about disease. Germ theory tackles when a person comes into contact with an external pathogen. Germ theory is today's flagship theory and really emphasizes a sparks-based approach. In fact, in medical science, we keep digging deeper and deeper looking for the sparks of chronic diseases, and yet we cannot find them. We get lost in conditions, and that's because germ theory has no means to deal with conditions. Although germ theory reportedly debunked terrain theory, that theory is alive and well. It has to be because we need a solution to the conditions problem. Terrain theory, whether it's called that or not, shows up in this idea that what you eat is important in terms of maintaining a healthy system. It's behind this idea of immune boosters and making your body stronger to fight off these pathogens however they arose. It also more adequately describes what we think about genetic predispositions and their role in chronic disease. Genetic predispositions don't necessarily cause disease in a sparks-based approach and fit better in a conditions-based one. Finally, miasma, which treats sparks and conditions as the same thing depending on how you look at it, really describes today's beliefs about risk factors. Risk factors such as alcohol intake, cigarette smoking, physical inactivity form this sort of nebulous cloud of factors that are conditions of disease, yet when the disease happens, they are treated as the sparks of them in hindsight. Really, we see an overlap of all three. And the reason that happens is because we don't have a theory of disease. And given that it covers all the possible relationships of sparks and conditions, but still can't explain chronic disease, is an important observation. Not only does it create a lot of complexity that doesn't answer any questions, but more importantly, causes pause for us to think, well, what if the sparks and conditions or cause and effect relationship isn't what we think? How could it be anything different though? There's something fundamentally inaccurate about how we think disease unfolds. We know that conditions have a role in disease because certain exposures don't cause disease in everyone. So really the trouble is sparks. Pretty much every healing art believes something triggers disease, but nobody can find it or agree on what that might be. Everyone's looking for something, but they can't find the thing. This compounds the problem that we really can't define what disease is. So now not only do we not know what disease really is, but we can't really figure out how it started. What's missing here is behavior. When we think about behavior of a living organism, is it a cause or an effect? Is it a spark or a condition? It doesn't really fit very well. It could be both. When we think of disease, disease really gets at a system's behavior that seems to have deviated from normal for some reason. It's not a thing. So how does it fit in? That creates a lot of new questions, but importantly here is the sparks-based approach that medicine relies on isn't accurate, or it's not accurate enough. It does work sometimes, but not all the time. As long as we continue to focus on this sparks-based approach, we will never find the solutions to chronic diseases. And despite misgivings with other theories that tackle conditions that appear less scientific today, medical science and clinical medicine begrudgingly relies on them, even if it calls them something else. All of this is happening not because we have a theory, but because we're operating in the vacuum created by the absence of a theory of disease, at least a functional one. Well, that's it for today. Be sure to like, subscribe, and leave your comments below. I'd love to hear your feedback about these videos so I can make them more engaging and useful on this quest to find a future of medicine we want. Have a great day.